So, hi, this is Amanda Dolan, and welcome to the Mental Society. Today, I am joined by Dr. Lauren Pitts. Dr. Pitts is the CEO and founder of Legacy Counseling and Life Coaching, an author, and she also hosts the TALK Pregame podcast, providing powerful, raw, real-life sports and mental health information that athletes and their families need to make well-informed athletic and life transforming decisions. Sorry, I got caught up on my words. So, Dr. Pitts, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me, Amanda. I'm looking forward to what sounds like it's going to be a powerful conversation. I'm really excited.
Yeah. So I ask you to come and talk about like mental health and sports. And I have younger kids. They're 14 and 15, and my son plays football. And I've seen some really great benefits for him in that process. So let's start with what are some of the great things that organized sports give us?
Oh my goodness. It's organized sports have a lot of benefits for our kids. The opportunity for them to make friends and to learn order and structure and discipline, to know what it's like to be motivated, to be able to sort of submit to leadership, to learn how to both lead and follow, to learn how to have a good attitude, to have good sportsmanship, to take wins and losses. The list goes on and on and on. There's an endless list of benefits that our kids really can experience from playing sports. And for those kids, many of them do. They have that dream of going to the pros. For some of those athletes, it is a gateway to a career beyond the the elementary, middle, high school level. It can be instrumental in helping them to pay for their education if they prove to be a stellar elite athlete and can go to college on an athletic scholarship. And for those few, because a lot of people don't realize there's only 2% of athletes that go into the various professional leagues, but that's still 2%, right? Yes, there's 98% that don't, but that 2% that do is an elite group that has the ability to go on to do some extraordinary things. And then there's tremendous benefits that go with that, being able to provide for their family, being able to get that exposure, being able to be extraordinary role models for family, friends, community, and really the world. So it's a lot of benefits, a lot of them.
And I like it. That made me think of LeBron James, right? Who he didn't even go to college, right? He just went straight into the pros.
Yeah.
But you don't hear bad things about him. He seems like, he has got it together. He's used this as a platform. He's made a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
This is
indeed.
But he's also doing a lot with that. But I didn't 2% actually is more than I thought would go.
2%.
Which, yes, a small number, but there's that's
there's hope for some.
Right. And also, not everyone is cut out for it on different levels, right? Because there's a lot of mental game, right, that goes into being a professional athlete.
Absolutely. Well, here's the thing, Amanda, that a lot of people don't realize is that with each level of athletic play, so some children start out at as young as 5 years old in their athletic involvement. Depending on what the sport is, I know that there are people that have started their children out as early as 4 years old, for example, in golf or martial arts or competitive swimming. So it really is sport specific as to how young the child might start their involvement. But we're talking 4 or 5 years old. Gymnastics is a sport where they start really early as well. And you're going all the way up to perhaps the pro level. But here's the thing that people don't understand. There's a different level of commitment at each level where one's mental health is concerned. Why? Because the demands are much greater as you advance to each level going up into the pro level. So there's a lot of preparation that has to be done emotionally, physically, financially, spiritually, intellectually for these scholar athletes that there's a lot of attention that needs to be paid to that. And the mistake that parents make and that people make, period, oftentimes is that there's laser focus on the athletic performance and not nearly enough focus on the mental health and the overall well-being
Yeah.
of the child. And that's something that I'm really passionate about.
And I want to get into that in a minute, but I wanted to touch on, my son will get in the car after practice sometimes and he'll be like, this person did whatever. And we all had to run laps. We all got punishment. And I have like this back and forth with like, they're showing, that they're a team and that like there's some like almost peer pressure for them all to behave well and to, work together. But then also it's like, well, that's kind of crappy that my kid did everything right and he had to run, in Texas and, full pads in the afternoon, an extra 4 laps, which is, about a mile. Like that's a lot. And so, and I think that, sports is often about community, even those individual sports like golf, like you're still on a team. There's people that you play with. So how does that like punishing the whole team for one person's actions impact the community of that sports team?
So there's both benefits and drawbacks for that, right? Because what it can do is it can encourage camaraderie. It can strengthen that sense of community because it creates space for accountability. It creates space for teammates of that athlete that's dropping the ball, no pun intended, to pull that athlete up and be like, look, we're not all about to run gassers. We're not all about to run we're not all about to do suicides or whatever the punishment is, because you don't want to do what you need to do. And that creates space for adverts, right? Because, if I may say it in street terms, some athletes, you're going to get a beat down in the locker room because it's hot as fire outside. And we just had to run an extra mile because you wanted to come to practice late, or because you wanted to mouth off at the coach, or because you kept, fumbling the ball, or whatever the case may be. Not cool. It's not okay. But the flip side of that coin too is, and I've seen coaches do both. The flip side of it is to single the athlete out, to punish them with the strategic approach that the team is going to step up and say, well, you know what, we're going to do it with them. But then there's still the door opening up for accountability here to be like, hey, you know what, it's hot, man, or girl, stop playing around and do what you need to do, because we are a cohesive team and we're not going to see you sort of be punished individually, but we're tired of pulling up your slack too. So it's this interesting balance that needs to happen. And again, I've seen coaches take both approaches, and both can be effective, but both can also be harmful too. So the onus of striking that balance really has to be on the shoulder of the coach, to know their players, to have an appropriate connection with their players, to be able, sometimes you got to get benched. Sometimes you need to be called in the coach's office. Sometimes you need to be set aside and set apart if your performance and your overall behavior and attitude is not helping the team, but breaking down the cohesion of the team. So it's a lot of moving parts is what I'm saying, that go into making those decisions as to what the consequences should be and could be for an athlete that's not pulling.
So there are benefits of that, like accountability, team building. There's always that saying, like, there's no I in team, right? Except for somebody once said to me, there's no I in team except in the a-hole, because if you write a capital A, it becomes, and I'm like, I kind of like that like there's no I in team except in the a-hole. And so, it's kind of that piece, like if you're going to be the jerk that keeps doing all of the things, then you're not really part of the team.
Right. Maybe you don't have the right attitude that's necessary to be a part of a team sport, and you might need to do some self-evaluation with that.
And one of the things I've noticed too with like my son's friends, he started late, which is funny to me that he started late in 7th grade playing football. I mean, and there were kids that have been playing for years at this
And they were 5 in midget.
Right. And so I see, like, whether it's soccer or baseball or gymnastics or all of those things, these kids that are constantly going, they might have, conditioning in the morning before school, and then they have school, and then they have their, hitting coach, and then they have team practice, and then they travel every weekend. And it seems like there's just this busyness of some of these athletes. And how does that affect, like, not just their mental health, but the mental health of their whole family?
It erodes it. It erodes it. And that's something, Amanda, that I address pretty frequently with parents of athletes that I work with, is that you and I were talking before we started recording, right? So one of the issues that we have is that there are a lot of parents that are living vicariously through their children. That's a problem. It's a problem that needs to be addressed. It's a problem that needs to be addressed when parents are pushing their kids, I mean, just annihilating. I remember when my son was playing Little League Baseball, and my son's 35, but back then there was a young man on his baseball team. This kid, I want to say they were maybe 9 or 10 at the time, and this kid was pitching no hitters at like 10. Wow. Like, he was a beast. He was an absolute beast, but it was because his dad had his foot in his back all the time, and he literally was just annihilating this kid. So it's like at 10 years old, 11 years old, this kid's shoulder is having to be iced. Like, how many kids do you know at 10 are pitching no hitters? Like, it was insane, but it was because his dad was determined that this kid was going to be a Major League Baseball player, which he did not become. Why? Because he grew to hate freaking baseball. He grew to hate it. In other words, his dad was trying to live vicariously through his son. He had this dream himself of being this amazing professional baseball player. Oh, yay, Amanda, I have a son. Now my son is going to be it. And his son hates baseball. I've seen the same thing with athletes and other sports player kids that were like really good in basketball, but they just wanted to play because they wanted to have fun. But these parents are putting this exorbitant amount of pressure on them. They are literally just browbeating these kids to be this stellar athlete. And there's nothing wrong with being stellar until it erodes your mental health, until the kid is suicidal, until the kid is depressed, until the kid has anxiety, until the kid is on the pitcher's mound crying because he didn't strike peak players at. Like, seriously, there's something very wrong with that picture.
And it almost makes me wonder, and you may not even have an answer to this, but like, if we let our kids have fun, like if that father, instead of pushing his kid so hard, had just let his son enjoy baseball, would he have made it to the pros?
Maybe,
but you
maybe
know what
not.
I mean? Like, right,
but it doesn't define him.
It doesn't, he was having fun. It was part of his life, not his life.
Right. You know what's so interesting about that, on a whole different level? I think about my son started playing sports literally when he was 5. He played football, basketball, baseball, ran track, and this, these events came in throughout the course of his life's journey. But he very easily could have gone to college on a baseball scholarship or on a swimming scholarship, right? But he said to me and his father, I don't want to play sports in college. We recognized he was really, really good. He was really, really good, and easily could have gone on a full athletic scholarship, which his father did. But growing up, seeing, and we were teen parents, so seeing his dad and the sacrifice that his dad had to make away from him, away from our family, away from everything, he was like, Mom, I just want to go to college and have fun. I want to be able, I don't want my love for sports to be a job. I want to have fun. I'm not worried about going to the pros. I'm good. Like, I have a career in mind, and it's not in professional sports. I'm not worried about going to the Olympics. I'm not worried about going to the Junior Olympics. I just want to be an extraordinary human being that, that is rock solid and stable and can live a good life in the whole 9 yards. And we were okay with that. We were okay with that, but so many parents aren't okay with it, and it's to their children's detriment.
I have a friend whose son was an elite athlete in
Mhm.
high school, played on the high school team, but also on a select team, traveled, went to
Mhm.
college, and his freshman year he played.
Mhm.
He almost failed out because of the rigors of the sport.
Yeah.
And he knew he was not going to play his sophomore year. And he talked to his mom, I'm not
Mhm.
going to play my sophomore year. But he was so
Mhm.
afraid of telling his father and his coach
Yep.
because he didn't want to let them down. It wasn't that he
Yeah.
didn't love the sport anymore. It was that he saw this is taking over my life and I
Yep.
don't like
I'm
it.
consumed.
I'm not going to be professional. Like this was
Right.
lacrosse. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
he's not going to be a professional lacrosse player. He
Right.
wasn't, he was in a Division III school. Like
Mhm.
you know, this wasn't him getting a
There's no
degree or
reason
not.
to die for this sport. This
Right.
sport is killing me. And I didn't come into playing this sport because I want to die for it. I came into playing this sport because I have fun doing it. I'm getting some sort of joy or fulfillment
Yes.
out of it. But I'm not going to lay down my life for this darn game.
And that's where he was. And I was so proud of him for saying, this isn't
Yeah.
working for me and I'm not
Right.
going to do it anymore.
Right.
And I think there are a lot of kids that feel like they can't necessarily. I mean, I hope all the kids out there feel like they could say, I'm not enjoying this anymore.
Yeah. But they can't,
So,
Amanda. They can't. There's so many, when I think about the athletes that I work with and have worked with throughout my career, I honestly can say that most of them don't have a level of comfort that they can go to their coach or go to their parents and say, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. There's so much guilt associated with what if I let them down, but like, and even here's the interesting thing, even on my podcast, my host is a former scholar athlete. He's also a licensed clinician. And he said, football, he started playing football at 8 years old, 7 years old, and went to college on a full athletic scholarship at a Division II school and did extraordinarily well. But coming from a family that was not impoverished, but a lower socioeconomic status,
mhm,
as we were talking about before recording, participation in sports is expensive, right?
right.
His guilt associated with continuing in that sport, even though his body and his mind was tired, was because my parents have invested so much money into my involvement in this sport. I don't want to let them down. And what I'm about to say is going to sound really, 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 really harsh. And it's going to sound borderline insensitive, but this is how I feel about it. Do parents want to push their kid to break? What would you rather have? A kid that says, Mom, Dad, I don't want to do this anymore? Or what would you prefer to have the police knocking on your door saying that you have to plan your child's funeral? Last year in 2022, Amanda, here in the US, we had five collegiate athletes at Division I schools commit suicide. There were more internationally. There's a problem with that these young people didn't have someone that they could go to and say, I'm overwhelmed and I'm thinking about ending my life because this pressure of this sport, this pressure of life is too much and I can't take it anymore. And I'm not blaming. I am not blaming the family members. I am not blaming the parents. However, we do have a responsibility to create an emotionally safe space for
Mhm.
our athletes to say, it's too much. I don't want to do this anymore.
Let me just say, like, that made me, like, I had a reaction and it's sad. And some people might be listening and think, well, five, like, that's not very many. But if you think about the total number of collegiate athletes there's really
Yeah.
not.
One is too many.
Yes. Oh, yes. 100%. One is too many. One suicide is
Yeah.
it's too much.
Yeah.
Um, but I know that growing up, I had some friends that were gymnasts and
Mm-hmm.
ice skaters.
Mm-hmm.
And I know several of them developed eating disorders because they
Mhm.
right had to look a certain way and they had to
Yeah.
fit into the,
Hmm.
all of the costumes, and they had to
Hmm.
look the right way, and you can't weigh too much and expect to be a doubles skating partner and be thrown up in the air if you're too big. So was it Ty Babylonia? I know this was a million years ago, right? That she is that who it was? A skater? She was a little bigger, but not big. Like that's what's funny is like she wasn't.
And I remember who Ty Babylonia was, but I'm not seeing her in my head. And the skater that I'm seeing that was a little heavier the most wasn't Ty Babylonia. And I can see her face clear as day.
I
The
don't, I'm gonna
girl,
Tanya
remember the skaters where the other one orchestrated the hit
Tanya
on the other.
Tanya
Harding?
Tanya Harding,
Was it
yes, and
Tanya Harding?
yes.
Hmm.
But this like idea of I have to look this way. I mean, and even for like for example, football players or
Hmm.
wrestlers. Wrestlers would be
Hmm.
a big one because you're in a certain weight class.
Hmm.
If you are starting to restrict your diet so significantly at 12,
Hmm.
13, 14, that's
Hmm.
impacting your physical health
Right.
long term,
Yeah.
um, as well as your mental health. I mean, right, there's so many pieces to that. So, like, if a parent start like, well, maybe do parents even notice that their child is struggling like that? Or
So
some, sorry.
here's the problem. Some parents notice, some parents don't, and some parents, Amanda, are a part of the problem. When I think about some of the athletes, particularly my female athletes that I've worked with over the years, who have communicated to me that their mother was the one that was on them about their weight and all of this pressure. And here's the kicker, not just on them about their weight as it relates to their athletic performance, but on them about their weight as it relates to an intimate partner. Like I when I think about a case that I have now, one of the things that we're addressing is this exorbitant amount of pressure that the athlete is under because the mom is just like, you got to lose weight, you got to lose weight, you got to lose weight. No man is going to want you if you're fat. Your times are too slow. Like it's bad. It's really bad. And that's a perfect example of these parents who have their own issues
Mhm.
that they're projecting or transferring onto their children that is eroding the child's mental health. It's adversely impacting the child's athletic performance. And it's this vicious cycle. It's that core negative interaction pattern that I talk to clients about that really for us as clinicians speaks to this systemic piece, right?
Mhm.
Recognizing that the family system and the athletic system is creating this chain link fence, if you will, that
Right.
is in it, it how do I want to say it? It's imprisoning our athletes. It's imprisoning our athletes and it's adversely impacting their mental health.
And it's again, like it's this pressure instead of it being fun. And because
Mm-hmm.
sports, right, we're all like, I feel like sports were created to be
Mm-hmm.
recreational and fun.
Mm-hmm.
And when it
Mm-hmm.
gets to this, where everything that you put in your body, food, you have
Okay.
to count the calories, or am I getting enough protein? And, or,
Mm-hmm.
in a wrestler, like I have to drop 4 pounds before tomorrow's match.
Right.
So I'm
Right.
gonna put on a sweatsuit and sit on this
Go run
bike
until I
for,
almost passed out. Mm-hmm.
but I'm not gonna
So
drink any water because that might, add weight back
water weight.
in.
So now I'm
Or
dehydrated and about to die.
or maybe I'll even take a laxative and help like clean my system out so that like
Yep.
because every ounce matters. And
Right.
and so I think that what people might not realize is that men or males can also have eating disorders. This is
Oh,
not an
absolutely.
exclusively female. I'm sure it's primarily female, or I think, or I wonder if it's not, and we just don't talk about it, or we don't see it.
Well, when you look at the NCAA, and I don't have that's what I glanced down. I was actually trying to pull the stats for you. But yes, there are men that have eating disorders. There's there's body image issues in both sexes within the field of
Mhm.
sports, and it is a problem. Statistics show that the higher percentage is among female athletes, but then you have to take into consideration, like you said, is that number accurate? Because men don't report.
Right.
There's among our athletes, one of the issues that we have where mental health is concerned is they underreport. So when we look at the stats that we do have, it stands to reason that those stats are probably higher than the data that we do
Right.
have because we have an issue of underreporting again because athletes don't feel safe reporting.
Well, I think so many people, when it comes to self-reporting,
Mm-hmm.
don't, for fear of judgment, even if
Right.
it's completely anonymous. People don't
Right.
always believe that.
Yeah.
Um, but so like I wanted just another question. So what about the kids in the family who are not the star athlete, who didn't
Mm-hmm.
end up, being the whatever, and so they're kind of on the sidelines? How does that impact their mental well-being if they're kind of the extra kid?
Well, it all depends on how the parents manage that piece. When you think about the fact that children learn from us, they are,
Mhm.
they imitate their atmosphere. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, those sorts of cliches. But that though they're cliche, they're real. And
Right.
parents or primary caregivers set the tone for the child's attitude in response to their athletic involvement. And if the
Right.
parent's head is not on straight, it stands to reason that the child is going to be adversely impacted to some degree. They might not be adversely impacted to the magnitude that the parent is, but to suggest that the child is not going to be impacted is ridiculous. Like they're
Right.
going to be impacted to some degree. So if the child that's not the elite athlete is encouraged to go out, do your best, have fun, make the most of it, you celebrate the small victories. Did they get in? They didn't get in. It doesn't make a difference. But even if it's a child that, is sitting on the bench for the season, that's fine. Now you have a teachable moment to teach them about having a good attitude, about encouraging their teammates, about being that rah-rah player, right?
Right.
That's the hype man. They get to be the hype man or the hype woman for the team, and they may get an opportunity to go in and shine, they might not, but there's still teachable moments in those experiences where they can still be
Right.
a great promoter of what it looks like and feels like to have good sportsmanship. And that's what it's all about, right? That per person could go on to be a great coach someday.
Yes, because coaches don't have to be the best athlete
No,
out
not at
there,
all. Uh-uh.
because coaching is different than
It's
playing.
about knowing how to be a leader. It's about learning how to motivate. It's about
And
learning how to bring the best out of the people with whom you're responsible for coaching.
and and I will forever say this, like there are people that are meant to coach certain levels, right?
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, I grew up in Kentucky, so like Kentucky basketball was, a thing. And
Mm,
I
Holy
was there in
Grail.
the 90s when, it was U of L and UK were both.
Yeah.
And I remember when Rick Pitino went to the Celtics, and he did
Hmm.
not do great as
Yeah.
a professional coach,
Yeah. Yeah.
but he was a great college coach. And there's a difference because, right,
It is.
collegiate athletes are often dependent upon staying on the team for their
Yeah.
education. Whereas
Yeah.
professional athletes, yes, it's their income, but they they don't have as much to lose, especially depending on the rank,
And they
you
can
know,
move around more. The ability for professional athletes to move around and to be traded to other teams, to request a trade, to even, you have some athletes that went from playing here in the US and they went to one of the overseas leagues. There's
mhm,
a lot more flexibility and opportunity for movement at the
right,
professional level. So it's not so much in it's like professional athletes aren't playing with the level of desperation that
uh,
sometimes you see players playing with at the collegiate level.
or even, I mean, I would assume high school too, because if they're trying to
Yeah,
get that scholarship and
trying
you
to get
can't move
scholarship, trying to
around,
keep their starting spot because that's where the
right?
money is.
And if
Yeah,
as a high school athlete, you don't get the opportunity to move teams because one,
right.
there's, rules about that, at least,
Yeah,
here, how long you have to live somewhere
right,
before you
right.
can transfer, things like that. But, you're in a district and you're zoned for a school. So there's not a lot that you get to decide when it comes to moving around. I think that's, yeah, I like that. I didn't think of it that way either, that there's that mobility almost of,
At the professional level that you don't have at the collegiate. Well, now at the collegiate level, the NCAA has sort of modified some of the rules around being transferred and eligibility to play once you transfer. They used to have to sit out a season,
right.
but now you can go into the transfer portal and you can play. So the NCAA has sort of relaxed their regulations
Okay.
around that. But kids, like you said, at the middle school level, at the midget level, at the high school level, don't have that same luxury. So there is a greater lean toward desperation in maintaining one
Right.
spot sometimes that you don't see at the higher levels of athletic play.
So when does a parent or child say, you know what, this is enough and we're done? Like, this isn't fun, beneficial. Like,
It
how does one know?
it's it's going to be case specific. But what I would say to the parents and the athletes that listen to your show is that you have to listen to your body and you have to listen to your mind. If it's the same concept as getting up to go to a job for us as adults, right? If you go to work every day and you genuinely and sincerely love what you do and you get
Right.
fulfillment out of, doing the paycheck, or as some people used to say, you would do it whether or not you were getting paid. If you get to a point where your athletic involvement starts to feel more like torture and it's
Right.
actually painful and you find yourself dreading playing, dreading going to practice, dreading the upcoming tour or whatever the case may be,
Mhm.
then it's a time for you to pause and say, hey, there's something going on here. This is not fun for me anymore. I'm not loving this experience anymore. And that's a golden opportunity for parents to really sit down. And yeah, you might be disappointed, but so what? So what? Get over it. It's not like that the be all end all. Like there's other things that kids can do
Right.
that can teach them some of the same skills that they get from athletic performance, but that doesn't put as much pressure on them mentally. And they can enjoy being kids. And that's part of the problem with us as a society. Kids aren't kids anymore.
Oh,
Kids aren't kids anymore.
I mean, I'm amazed at like some friends that I have who, their kids leave at 7:30 in the morning to go to school and they get home at
Mhm.
9 o'clock at night. And they
Right,
still have homework and dinner and a shower
right.
and laundry and, all the things. And it's like, how is that to me? I
Is that
don't want
helpful?
my kids over involved. Like
Mhm.
when, for like my son on game days this past year, he would leave, get to school at 8 in the morning, and we wouldn't get home until, depending on where the game was, 10 o'clock at night.
Right.
Now that was one day a
Yeah,
week for,
yeah,
12 weeks or something. It
yeah,
wasn't long, but it was enough that even me, I was like, oh, I don't want to be in my car outside the school waiting for the bus to show up,
yeah,
at 10 o'clock at night. I'm tired. I just want to be done with my day too.
yeah.
But he loves it. And so I will, I mean, it's not that much of a sacrifice, but I will,
Mhm.
do those things because
Yeah.
he loves it. And for him, he has created some amazing connections through that. He's
Yeah.
made some great friends. You know, my daughter, she's in choir and she loves choir. And in some ways, that's a team sport, right? Like you're
Yeah.
working
Oh,
together,
absolutely.
you're practicing together. And
Hmm.
so there's another place where you can learn how to work as part of a team
Right.
without, you know, the physical demands
The
on
physical
your body and the financial maybe as well, and the time commitment as much.
choir, the debate team, academic organizations, you still high schools still have DECA, they still have FBLA, they still, depending on where you are geographically in the
Mhm.
country, there's academic organizations that kids can belong to
Right.
that have some really awesome competitions, and they take kids on trips, and they do some really extraordinary things with kids that actually teach the same things conceptually that athletic involvement does. And it's less taxing on the body, it's less taxing on the mind, and it's less taxing on the wallet.
And so like they're great things, right, from these sports.
Mm-hmm.
And also there can be I don't want to say like, well, there can be problems, there can be like some downsides to them. You know, as we get older and we're not in that, you know, going to be a pro athlete, not even in that super competitive place. How
Mm-hmm.
about like those intramural sports or the community, you know, softball league?
Mm-hmm.
Like how does do those as an adult? How can that impact our mental well-being?
Well, it's just like anything else, right? There's definitely benefits to it because of the whole sense of community, but it's simple, but it's not. Here's the simple explanation. Anything in excess can harm you.
Yeah.
Period. So balance is imperative. As an adult play, like, for a long time, my husband played for the adult kickball community,
Hmm.
and he had a blast. He absolutely positively had a blast. It was tons of fun. He had a really good time. But when it got to the point that it was just like over the top, just really, folk just really intense, he was like, I'm over it. I'm over it because I'm doing this to have fun. And yes, we want to win. And his team was winning. But when you've got fans in the stands acting crazy and like, it's just too much.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what? Where is the balance? Everything doesn't have to be a crisis. Everything doesn't
It's
have
not
to
all or
be this
nothing.
adverse experience. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to. When we think about that, right? We clinically look at it within the context of cognitive distortions, that black or right, that extreme
Hmm.
thinking, the catastrophizing. Oh gosh, if we lose and I lose my starting spot, are you serious? Like, do you have nothing else in life to live for but this sport? And therein lies part of the problem. People's identities, Amanda, become consumed with these sports to their own detriment.
And I
Who am
just
I without football? Who am I without basketball? Who am I without baseball? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Who are
probably
you
someone
without
really amazing underneath all of that that you
yeah,
haven't taken the time
yeah, to
to
get to know?
and develop.
Yeah, you are a stranger to yourself, and that is a problem.
So at the end of the day, play sports or don't play sports. If you're having fun and you're getting something from it,
Yeah,
awesome. If you're not, reevaluate.
fast, quick, and in a hurry.
And at the very end of the day, if you're the parent and it's about you and not your child,
Yeah.
like think about that. Like what are you like maybe you as the parent needs some help. And I'm
Right.
sure that Dr. Pitts, you could help parents navigate
I'm trying, Amanda. I'm
if they're
trying to help folks because it's
um
like, woo,
yeah,
yeah,
you
there's
know,
a whole lot of here
we
that
all
need
want
help.
the things, right? That we all want to have the best. And as parents too, our identities are based somewhat in our children,
Yeah, indeed.
because they are part of us, and
Right.
that makes sense. But don't let what you want
Don't be a
prevent your
helicopter
child.
parent.
And
Don't
yeah,
be a helicopter parent and allow your child to be uniquely who they were purposed and predestined to be. and allow them to navigate life in the healthiest way possible. And, you know, so many parents don't allow that to happen. I know one of the things you mentioned before we started recording is, what do I say to these parents that have their kids involved in, all these clubs and sport and everything else? And I say, you can't manage all of that. You can't. It's like when I think about some of the children and adolescents in my own family, I have said to my relative, they're doing too much. It's like the kids say that, right? The kids say that and
Right.
just go, you're doing too much. You're being extra. Well, no, they're doing too much. Why does your sophomore, your junior, your senior in high school have freaking anxiety? Why does your sophomore, your junior, your senior, why is their hair falling out? Are you freaking kidding me? There's 24 hours in a freaking day, and you're supposed to sleep 8 of them. Why is your kid involved in 6 clubs, 4 sports, a partridge in a darn pear tree? It's too much. And oh, by the way, when you look at the applications for admissions to colleges, anybody that knows anything about college admissions, that anything beyond like 3 or 4 committed activities, they're looking at you sideways, because how can you be fully present?
Right.
How can you be the best that you can be when you are involved in 18 things? Oh, by the way, and you're working a part-time job. When are you sleeping? You're not. You can't even think straight because your brain is short-circuiting because you have so many things going
Right.
on. Anxiety, depression, paranoia, insomnia, eating disorders. I mean, it's crazy. No pun intended, but it's crazy. And the child is eroding their sense of self. It's like literally just seeing the kid turn to sand, and they're just diminishing with each thing that's piled on them. And it doesn't take all of that to show that you're stellar. It doesn't take all of that to
No.
prove that you're amazing. As someone who's been an overachiever my whole life, it doesn't take all of that to show that you're extraordinary, that you're exceptional, that you're intelligent. It just doesn't. It doesn't.
So
And
do
it's
what you
to the
love.
detriment of the
Yeah.
child. Mhm.
Don't, yeah. Don't do too much.
Yeah.
Enjoy. And, I talk about 2 things a lot on this podcast. One is the importance of community and our mental health. And the other
Mhm.
is the importance of rest and solid
Yes.
sleep on your mental health. And if you are missing those 2 things, your
It's
mental
like
health
being
is
on
not.
drugs.
Yeah. Like,
Sleep deprivation has the same impact on the brain that drugs and alcohol do. It deteriorates. And if you are sleep deprived, if you don't allow your physical body and your mind to get the appropriate amount of rest, I don't care what you say, and they can argue me down till they pass out. There is data to prove that you are not showing up 100%. If you have to take a Red Bull and a hit of whatever to get through, because something we talked about too before we started recording, kids pill popping, and they've got a friend that has
right.
ADHD, and let me take that, let me get that so that I can stay awake to study for this exam. Hello, there's a problem. There's a problem.
Yeah. And
Kids are still having farm parties.
yeah, it's,
They are.
yeah,
They're
I mean,
still
and
having these pharmaceutical parties where they're just exchanging drugs and trying to
and
stay awake and trying to stay sharp and trying to stay. Gotta keep going. Gotta keep going. Gotta keep going. Okay.
And I'm going to say this again, and I will say it over and over again. Don't tell me I will sleep when I die, because if you say that, you will die sooner and
Say
you
that.
won't live your life as well and
That's
enjoy
right.
it and be present.
Right.
So,
Right.
like, it's important for our physical and mental well-being to get the rest we
Mhm.
need, the nutrition that we need,
Right.
be involved in the things that matter to us,
Right.
but it can be too much.
Right.
All of those things, right? You can get too much sleep. I know that may sound weird, but if you're not getting out of bed,
That's a
what's going
problem too.
on? There's
Anything in excess. Anything in excess is not good for you. You have to have balance in every aspect of your life. If you don't have balance, something is going to be thrown out of whack, and you're going to feel it in your mind or you're going to feel it in your body. but you are going to feel it. It's going to show up.
And when you start to feel that, take a pause,
Yeah.
evaluate what's going on, and make some changes as necessary.
In a hurry. Absolutely.
And so being involved in sports is great. I know I feel like we ended on this, like all these bad things, but sports can be fantastic. There's that community that we talked about in the beginning, and it's great for your body. It can be great for your mental health too, when you're moving and you're active. But like you said, it's that balance. Is it too much? If you're spending 6 or 7 hours a day as a 15-year-old on your sport, maybe it's time to take a step back and see what's really going on. But also enjoy what you're doing. And if it's that sports, awesome. If it's choir, awesome. If it's debate, awesome. Be involved in a community at whatever level you're at. So on that will end. So Dr. Pitts, thank you so much for being here with me and sharing your wisdom about sports and our mental well-being, and especially when it comes to our kids. So I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
And if you want to find more about Dr. Pitts, you can check out her website, which is drlaurenpitts.com. Super easy to
It's Dr. Lauren D. Pitts.
Oh, Lauren D. Pitts. Ah, yes, it is. It's right there on my screen. LaurenDPitts.com. And I'll link that in the show notes, as well as links to her books that she's written, and her podcast as well. Because if you've got a kid or if you're an athlete, I think you could definitely benefit from listening to House Talk Pregame, so that you can, see what's going on in that world of sports. And again, thank you so much for being here with me. And with that, we have reached the end of today's episode. And thank you so much for listening and learning more about how mental health and society meet. Go out and open a conversation and discover how mental health is experienced in your world. You can find more episodes of the Mental Society in all the places you find your favorite podcast. Please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. You can find additional resources by visiting our website, thementalsociety.com. And remember that you are not alone in your struggles. Hope and help surround you. And until next time, this is Amanda Dolan, wishing you good health, mental and otherwise.